At 6:36, I will call the meeting to order and ask everyone to, wait for me to share my screen. Rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right.
And I'll turn over to Bob for roll call.
Okay. Trustee Chapman.
Here.
Trustee Allen.
Here.
Trustee Signorella.
Here.
Trustee Reedy is absent at the moment. And Supervisor Mullen.
Here. Wow, my voice kind of broke on that one.
Huh? I need Highway Commissioner Young.
Here.
And Assessor Trowbridge.
Here.
Okay. And then aside from that, I see we have got Silver, and that's all I see.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, that moves us into public comment.
Oh, and Bill, and of course, Bill.
And Bill, yes, of course.
You, not that you,
So in terms of public comment, the online form, I did not receive any responses, as you can see from the form that I'm sharing currently. I will ask if anyone on the call has any comment to issue. Staring at Scott, sorry. Hearing none, then we'll keep moving forward into the reason for our meeting tonight, the budget workshop for fiscal year 2022. Figure we just, as usual, department by department, go through, ask, just give a quick overview of what we sent out and see if anyone has any questions about what we have put together so far. John, Ed, do you guys want to rock, paper, scissors, or arm wrestle virtually to decide who goes first? Or
If it be possible, Ed, all I was gonna say is my budget hasn't changed from the previous year or the prior year before that. And in light of the move and the potential expenses that may come through, I'm just asking that the budget for the assessor's office remain the same. I think we can make it happen with what we have. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody had any.
so John, you heard any expenses off of a different line item with the move and everything you've got going on, or is that already in the township budget because of the relocation? I mean, that's
There are some that would be coming out of the supervisor's budget. There are some that would be coming out of mine, and what I'm hoping to do is if we keep everything that we have static, I think we'll be okay.
go ahead, Tony.
Yes, John, I was actually going to ask about the move, but to follow up on what Bob was asking, I was wondering about any additional expenses besides the move, but also getting onto the INET.
Yes, that actually is my understanding is that would actually be a cost that would be incurred by the supervisor's office for the INET. So that would not be part of what our budget would be, because if it was, we'd have to make an adjustment.
Okay.
The slowness in responding to getting on the INET is a problem with Mary Jo and I, and it's not really a problem. We just haven't had time to devote to getting it done.
Yeah.
We'll get it done in the next month or two, for sure.
Yeah.
No, not a problem, Ed. I was just curious about the costs involved.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So I guess I'm up.
Sure, go for it. Unless I just make sure no one has any other questions for John. Okay, go ahead, Ed.
I sent out my normal spreadsheet. I think it had 4 sheets. Let me address the first one with respect to labor. I went through and used the current rates for everybody employed. I think I told you, Chris Reeder has resigned. He's gone to South Carolina. So we'll have I didn't tell you that before. I looked by Kathy's expression. I thought I had let everybody know. Yeah, he came in, I think 3 weeks ago and said, hey, I'm out of here, which surprised us all. And it was very interesting because his wife's just finished a degree in a medical field, a master's, and I'm not quite sure I have all the stories straight. And she wanted to go in that field. She found an excellent opportunity in North Carolina. And she said, we're going. South Carolina. So they're up and they're gone. They've sold their house and they've moved the kids and everybody. So it appears to be going very well and we wish him well. We're disappointed to lose the guy, but we didn't have to advertise anything. We've had our 4 applicants just through word of mouth, 3 of which we think are pretty good. So we're optimistic about getting that filled pretty quickly. Absent than that, I detailed there how I put that labor budget together, and I don't think there's much, but I'll be glad to answer any questions about anything there if anybody has any questions about my labor.
How long was Chris with you? And, does a new person, is that significant savings, a little bit of savings? I mean.
Well, you asked it now, I can't find that spreadsheet.
It's in what difference?
On the spreadsheet for the labor buildup, here it is.
I got it.
It's got the years. Chris was with us 10 years.
Okay.
And he just vested. No, he was vested because he was tier 1. And we'll have, if you look at the difference between Chris and Andrew Bark, the last guy on the list, there's not that much. It's $3 an hour. I mean, that's significant, 10% for that particular. So that's $6,000 or something thereabouts. But I think I'm going to have to kick those 2 lower guys up. I've got to get them moving faster and move up the middle guys as well, because what I compare them to is the labor rates in Naperville and Lisle. And Lisle and Naperville are both union shops.
Mm-hmm.
Naperville is very high. In Naperville, Lisle for some reason is pretty low. So I try to balance between the 2, but you've got to be aware of what what's going on out in the market, especially with Naperville, because they continue to grow some, which is surprising, and they're hiring people. So I don't want them to hire our guys away because we're very happy with them. They got them all pretty well cross-trained. So we're gonna have to increase those some throughout the year. The next sheet, I guess the second most important sheet would be my capital expenditures projection. And I have $440,000. I had $470 budgeted last year. On the sheet, I detailed what we purchased in 2021 or what we will receive in 2021, because we're getting to get a truck. We get half the truck. We're gonna get the chassis of the truck of a new Peterbilt truck before this fiscal year ends. And then the back end will come next fiscal year from Monroe. They are that backed up that you can't get them. It takes them about a year to get a truck done. And we got that front end loader, as I discussed with you before. And the biggest thing that we don't know about, that I can't address how much it's going to cost, is the repair of the buildings. If you look at the building, I have bird nests all throughout.
Which building?
Pardon me?
One or both buildings?
Just the main headquarters. And there's bird nests going through, and I need to get that fixed, and I need new windows. And I want an architect to come out and look at structural, make sure that anything we try and do will be okay with the structure. I don't think there's any overall concerns other than the bird hotel upstairs inside our building. So I'll start that before we finalize the budget for this year. I'll have some better numbers for you. Other than that, I think it's just what I presented the last 2 years of what we intend to acquire in 2022. Any questions on capital expenditures? the line items, and I apologize, the line items on the spreadsheet on the line items I had down below the line items that increased or decreased by $10,000 or more, and I didn't sort them for you. I apologize for that. But the biggest ones were decreases, and the one was engineering for $105,000, and the other one was curb replacement for $100,000. That was a decrease as well. The engineering went down so much is because when you use MFT money, as we did this year for the paving program, it must be overseen by an engineer, and they get 11% of the contract. That's just the way it works. It's part of MFT's requirements, part of the state requirements. So we won't have that this year, so that's why it's going to go down $100,000. The curb and sidewalk replacement, I think there's only so many sidewalks I can replace within the township. I've spent 400, 300. I think it's got to come down. So I'm projecting that to go down to $200,000. But I intend to keep that program going for this year, where we absorb 75% of the cost and just pass on 25% of the cost to the homeowner. The largest increases for a lighting program, and we pay for certain street lights throughout the township, the electric. And what I want to look at this year is whether we can get them replaced with LED lights. I think long-term, that's a very cost-effective program. And I want to work with ComEd to get that done. And I think with that increase of $40,000, we should be able to easily achieve that. The rest is minor changes in line items just because of what I think the economic circumstances are. I reduced overtime by $75,000, and every time I guess at what the overtime cost is going to be, I get it wrong by a factor of 2. So it's just a crapshoot. And then the last sheet that I distribute is my fund balance review to see whether I'm in compliance. I do have a little bit of work to do on the liability insurance. It looks like I'm a little high there in that projected fund balance. Also in the road and bridge, but the road and bridge is easily fixed with certain expenditures that will be incurred before the end of this fiscal year. And that's my budget. Overall, it's down just a little bit, 4%. And that's primarily a result because we put so much into paving this year using the MFT money. When you put $800,000 worth of capital in the budget for this current year, it's got to be reflected the next year on the paving program being decreased significantly. Thank you.
Anyone have questions for Ed?
Ed, I do. You brought up the idea of lighting and, excuse me, sorry. No one has approached me in terms of lighting in the Meadows neighborhood, but there was some discussions on different social media regarding lighting in the unincorporated areas. And I didn't have the answer for myself, and then I wanted to see what the options are now that there is a school, in an active school in the neighborhood. Are there parameters for the township lighting unincorporated areas?
You mean with respect to installing new lights?
Yeah, our neighborhood essentially has no street lights.
Right. The only places that we have, and I'm not, it's a long historical question. I'm not sure how we ever came into paying for these, but they're only along major arterials at intersections. Hobson Road and those intersections off of Hobson Road where we have streets. But we don't have any streetlights that we pay for in any of the subdivisions. Century Hill has streetlights, but they're their own streetlight. It used to be a taxi body, and that was taken over by the county. And that was just the last couple of years, maybe 3 years ago. But none of the other subdivisions do we put streetlights in.
Is that the general understanding? Like, can we not put them in, or is that practice? Like, what's the parameters there?
We just always have declined to do so. We didn't want to take on the liability or the expense.
Okay.
Kathy, if I could, if the people of the Meadows wanted to have an additional taxing body and bring in a a lighting district, they can vote that as electors, they can vote that in and then have that added to their tax bill.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know the history of it, so I thought I would ask, since it was brought up. I think we have a number of new families in our community and
Sure.
in our neighborhood. And so I think it's just good to know.
Well, that lighting
And
taxing body that John addressed went away as part of Cronin's, the chairman of the township's effort to eliminate levels of government. So they're reluctant to have lighting districts because they view it as another level of government. And the county took it over. Ultimately, I believe the tax is still there, John, is it not?
Correct.
But ultimately, that cost is going to increase, and other taxpayers in the county are going to wind up subsidizing the cost of Century Hills.
Bill?
We pay a bill for Steeple Run lighting. So Steeple Run, I believe, does have a lighting district still, and we actually pay the bill.
Really? Do we put new lights in, Ed?
I have nothing to do with that. I've never heard of that.
They've been there since Chuck was the supervisor before. It's a taxing district that's been there, and we've been paying the bill every month.
Steeple Run?
Yep.
There are streetlights there, yeah.
Or we pay the ComEd bill, I should say.
Tony, go ahead.
So just really a comment, Ed, if I'm reading this correctly, a decrease in the budget from last year to this year in 11.75%, over $400,000. That's really substantial and very good. That's efficient government right there. So I think our residents and our taxpayers will really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Anything else for Ed? Okay, moving on. To my ridiculous spreadsheet. So for the supervisor's office, I do have, like I said in my email, some of the tabs do have John's numbers inserted into them, so you can kind of see what the roll up is with the assessor's office, as well as, that's all of Fund 10, and then 20 is for general assistance. For expenses, well, I'll make one comment on income. Oddly enough, we had a discussion with our financial advisor personally today, and there is no interest to be made anywhere in the world right now. So you will definitely see from the income side of things that the line item for the interest in our town fund is dramatically lower this year than anticipated. And then, so I'm just continuing to project that will stay low next year. So just one note on that on income. For expenses, I did change up a few things. Bill noted to me today that when I did the blended salary for the elected officials, I did make a mistake with John's, because John starts at a different time as the rest of us. So I didn't estimate that right. It won't be his new salary doesn't go in effect until the first of the year in 2022, because of the way the assessor's office works. So I did the math wrong there. So it's probably off by like $1,000 or something of where it would actually come in. So I just want to note that Bill pointed that out to me today. Most of our routine and operational expenses are remaining the same. There are kind of a smattering of increases and decreases, I would say, so that in the end, sorry, my computer froze. Okay. All said and done, it's about 120,000 more than it was last year. We have decent reserves to spend down upon, and which is part of the reason we've been able to lower the levy. So it's kind of, I projected out several years on one of the tabs, so you can kind of see that we won't be overcommitting ourselves with a lower levy either. In terms of the line items that have changed, once you get past the elected officials' salaries that we approved, a lot of the small ones are just taking a look at where we have been and how we've been spending, and making small tweaks for things like the water and sewer bill. For telephone, I added in some additional funding into the telephone line item in order to ensure that we can switch over to a voice over IP system. Probably by the time that's fully implemented, we'll be into the next fiscal year. Because we're kind of wanted to time it with around INET if we can make that work. For capital improvements, 10-1308, that is significantly decreased because this year we had an HVAC project that we'll talk about tomorrow. And then the build out of the assessor's office space there. Those large expenditures come down, and I'm leaving about $75,000 or $75,000 in the capital improvements in case there's any additional build out for INET that would be covered there, and any additional upgrades beyond just the equipment and what's needed to do voice over IP. I know that depending on where we want phones, if they have to put in any additional wiring or anything inside the building, that's want to ensure we have room to do that. Going down the list, there's a couple line items that you'll see that there were overages this year because of COVID. Well, something happened in my spreadsheet. I'm sorry. I just noticed some of my notes got shifted. Hate that. But
you're not projecting, so we're.
I know, but I know that what you have means that was
Yeah.
probably offset, which is annoying. Okay, so office supplies and, because I took that off, that's why. Office supplies, office equipment was a little higher this year because we had increased spend because of COVID. We're in buying PPE and making purchases for the office to ensure the food pantry could operate. I'm planning that there'll be a small increase, that this will, some of those supplies will continue to be necessary, but hopefully not the entire fiscal year at the same rate of use. I've taken down printing and publishing. Last year I had hopes and plans and had left some room in there in case we wanted to start doing a newsletter. And that's really not come to fruition. And I think as we move to a new website, it'll be better to do just to stick with like email updates and social media updates. I think a hard newsletter that introducing something new, like a hard newsletter, probably won't be as effective as staying digital. So I'm just cutting down where I had thought about doing, leaving some room for printing for that purpose. When it comes to IMRF, FICA, group insurance, and salaries, we did have an increase in FTE this year. We converted a part-time employee to a full-time employee to get us through food pantry operations under COVID. When we had a lot of our drivers unable to continue to do the work with us until we get past COVID. On top of that, I have an additional FTE factored into here for a social worker to be able to accommodate whatever the outcome of the mental health discussion is and the plan from or the report that we get out of the DuPage Federation for Human Services Reform. What we had talked about in launching that is we probably need to have somebody here who'll specialize in that. Sarah is very occupied with Job Club and that work. And if she had someone else on staff here, we'd at least be able to start picking up some of the duties and things that we find important in mental health So the things that the mental health board would cover, and we can start taking on some of that load inside the township and delivering services around, being that umbrella for anyone who is in need of mental health services, substance abuse services, developmental disability services. You know, we have somebody who can kind of point you in the right direction, lead you down the path, and make sure you know where you need to be and what you need to do. So
Mary-
at least having that availability in the budget is planned for. Yeah, go ahead.
And then we also have, again, I don't think we need to say publicly, a potential retirement in the next few months. Again, you and I have talked about, do we make that someone capable of doing some more of this work as well? And look at how some of that is rearranged. I think that's a good thing to mention the board. So maybe it's even more than one more, just one full body we can throw at it, but maybe two, the current salary structure.
Right.
Or 1.5, right? If the other one's still dedicated to half. So I think that's, so if there's more needs than just the person, there's actually maybe some counseling abilities there and as well. I mean, so it's probably something, is that something, because it's retirement, we still talk about because it's personnel in executive session? Again, not necessarily who, but the roles and stuff. Or
I think if you're not saying who, we can just talk really broadly. But yeah, that's there is somebody who plans on retiring that we're just kind of waiting to set timelines and stuff for him.
So, okay. So there might be another resource as well.
Yeah.
So, okay.
And then on the line item for counseling, for mental health, and for youth and family, I've increased all of those a moderate amount, up to 5,000 for counseling, 10,000 for mental health, and 5,000 for youth and family, with the idea that mental health, I'd like to recommend, I know it won't be my job to do this next year, but I'd like to recommend we continue to support Youth Outlook, the partnership we formed under COVID, as a service to our residents. And leaving space in the youth and family side and in mental health for development of partnerships with other nonprofits to kind of continue to grow in that space and maybe not take it on ourselves, but work with someone who's already doing good work and make sure that they can deliver those services within our township as well. And similarly for the counseling meetings line item, greater support of counseling services, whether we're delivering them and we just need the something supportive for the person delivering counseling services, or we work with one of our local providers who'd be willing to see people in need, people who don't have financial resources to pay for services, to pay for counseling, that we could develop some sort of program with them, something like that. So I'm just trying to leave a little space in those line items to be able to implement some of the recommendations I would expect we'll get out of the mental health report.
Mary Jo.
Yes.
So to that point on mental health, I know that Shafali with Giving DuPage is going to be joining our meeting tomorrow in public comment, and in an effort to increase collaboration, cooperation between the nonprofits in DuPage County, especially in Lisle Township. That's definitely something that we should discuss with her tomorrow. It's a perfect opportunity for us to do that. Yep,
absolutely. And that's one of the things that I really tried to do last few years is form some of these partnerships and meet with executive directors of some of the local nonprofits and get to know some people that have overlapping services with us, right? That reach the same client, because we can help refer to each other also. But we really haven't established any new partnerships like this beyond what we started in the last couple of months. So I think it'd be great to be able to propel that under in the mental health space, when we get the results of what the recommendations are. And then lastly, under general assistance, I'm increasing the line item for rent, just knowing that seems to continue to be the biggest need. We're not projecting to go over it. Mostly because we had a large dip over the summer that we normally would have seen people coming in, but because of the moratorium on eviction, we didn't see people. I'm expecting that to continue to increase. We've been seeing increases on the rental side, rental assistance side. So I just want to be able to give ourselves a little cushion on the rental side to make sure that we have the ability to meet the increased need from COVID, and some of the longer term impacts that it's going to have. Sorry. And then all of the saliva just ran away from my throat. Sorry. So that summarizes the changes in expenses that I'm proposing. Are there any questions on what I've proposed?
Mary Jo,
Mhm.
there was a couple of things a couple of years ago, a grant from the state, and again, I'm looking at it thinking of
It was for the pantry. Yeah.
and I saw the van replacement line made me think of it. Did those grants not ever actually come through, or did we not? I mean,
I got a notification in the fall that one of them was still to come.
okay.
I need to reach back out to, they're like, they notified us and then they closed again.
Okay.
So I just need to reach out and find out what's going on with that.
Okay. Like I said, I just saw the van
Maybe
replacement
late summer, but yeah.
line item, and I'm like, oh, hey. So,
Yeah. And the one that was moving forward was, I believe, the one that was for converting the interior cool area into a real walk-in refrigerator.
what do we have for a budget on that?
That was around 20,000, 20 or 25.
So-
That one was 25, and then the pantry van refrigeration unit was 20.
So if those don't come through, one thing we could probably talk about is, I think Friends of Lisle Township had a very good month in December.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, they've had a really high year, totally.
Yeah, I think, something like this has made a lot of people aware, and I haven't spoken to them, that's not my place, but I would feel confident if we came to them with a plan that, hey, this is what we can do in an improvement. I mean, just talking anecdotally to a few of the people who I know personally on that board,
Yeah.
they're like, oh, we have a lot of money, and I think they'd be up. I know they bought a freezer last year. I think they'd be up for something else again this year.
Okay.
If you had something that you wanted to try to get done in the next couple of months, I think we should. I think that'd be a good thought.
Okay.
That doesn't have to come out of this.
Right. Totally.
So relatedly, I see the expenses for the food pantry, not van related, is $15,000. One proposal would be to, in an effort to improve efficiencies, there's been some discussion or some ideas about establishing scheduled, online meetings, pickup times for food, just to somehow make it a little bit more user-friendly, thinking like, as you would for making an appointment for a doctor's appointment, and doing it that way. I'm not sure if that's something that can be done. I haven't talked with, I believe it's Charlie over there yet, but wanted to bring it to this group, just because we're having a discussion. What we're trying to do here is improve efficiencies in government, and that would definitely make it more customer friendly for our clients. I was wondering if that improvement could be made, number one, and number two, would it come out of that $15,000 that's budgeted there?
So I think doing something like that would be simple for us to be able to, let's say simple, straightforward for us to implement. Probably would really just require an app like Calendly that you could, is a scheduling software, without going something super complicated like doctor's offices use, just something that like a coach or consultant would use. I use one called 10 to 8 and it's free. And it integrates with Outlook calendars. It does, really basic stuff. And then you just avoid people overlapping each other. So yes, that's totally straightforward from that perspective. I would say though, that I don't think we'd be able to go fully to that kind of system. Because I think a lot of people don't necessarily, who are our clients, have control over their schedule and kind of make their way here when they can.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, we would definitely need to consider that and kind of work that into the system. But also in terms of keeping track of inventory in real time, maybe there's a possibility to dual effort there, it would improve efficiency and timing for our clients, but then again, for us and for our food pantry folks, it would definitely improve their inventory and their records.
So we
So-
don't actually have an inventory management system right now. West Suburban Community Pantry actually was looking at going to a new inventory management system, and it's expensive.
Okay.
It's a big deal. And Bill actually, I think, had been contacted by somebody who was going to kind of let us, do a scanning kind of a thing. And it's significant in terms of cost and effort without probably the payoff. Some a facility as large as West Suburban, it makes much more sense because they're really located in a warehouse. Like Charlie can literally walk through the shelves and see what we need and jump into the food bank's ordering system and order it. So in terms of return on investment on that, for inventory management, you may not get it as much. In terms of streamlining and being more efficient in terms of appointments and things like that, that would be something definitely to look at. The one other thing I'll mention is West Suburban Community Pantry has been a pilot program with the food bank for a system that they started out just using with bridge communities, and now they're implementing more widely within West Suburban. And the food bank will probably be looking at expanding this longer term. So maybe over the next couple of years, it may be offered up to every pantry like us. But they are allowing their clients to order groceries online and have it delivered to bridge communities. So they have a central location where they come to bridge communities and people run through and pick it up in a 2-hour slot. So that people who are at work and having a hard time getting there during operating hours have, after work time that it's delivered to their apartment buildings and they can go grab it. So that online ordering system through the food bank may be something in the not super near, but not too distant future that they would be willing to open up to other pantries. And we have a very good relationship and reputation with Northern Illinois Food Bank. And I think we'd probably be one of the ones that they would be very open to letting us explore it sooner than later when they start opening.
Well, you were very aggressive in adopting the client choice, which of course, unfortunately, has gone out the window because of COVID.
Yeah.
But
and that was a pretty big deal it was something that they were mandating and we jumped in head first. And the fact that we did it early, we were an early adopter of it, helped some of the other pantries, including West Suburban, that we spoke at. Charlie and I went to the Hunger Network in DuPage County and talked about our experience with it and how we got through some of the obstacles and some of the things that he did to make that easier for volunteers, make it easier for clients, and help some of the other pantries that were a little nervous about making that plunge.
right.
All right, thank you. Just
Yeah.
wanted to start the discussion, see what we could do.
Yeah, no, that's great. Kathy, you look like you're about to ask something before too.
As always, I love your spreadsheet. Thank you for putting this together. And, my question though is, am I missing somewhere that's kind of got the summary of the fund balance test?
Oh.
Similar to what Ed provided for us? Am I missing it? I just was looking for it.
There's a tab called budget summary. The blue one.
It's the very last one you have to drag over. Because there's more tab.
You got to press on the 3 dots on the right. It'll add the more tabs. You see that?
Budget summary for levy or budget summary?
Budget summary. The for
It's
levy
after-
one was, I used it a few months ago to do the same calculation when we were prepping for the levy.
Where am I finding the percentage?
Okay, so the way I do it a little differently. So you have total funds available on the 15th line, and then I've got the average 3-year spend and 2.5 times the 3-year spend in line 21 as a comparison of at our highest where we'll be, and then what our estimated funds are at the end of the fiscal year. So estimated fund balance on 3/31/22 will be 3.3 million, or 2.5 times the 3-year spend. Average spend is 5.6.
Okay, so you did it in the aggregate numbers, not in a percentage summary.
Right. I just did it as a comparison to 2.5 times. and Tony, you missed all of the pain. But the 2.5 times is the rule of thumb that's used in evaluating if you should be levying, and if it's perceived that your reserves are would be 2.5 times your 3-year average spend, then you are subject to tax objections, which is fun legal times for us all. So.
I would
Well, and
assume-
it's not that you can't, it's just that you have to make sure you've told people while you're accumulating access. So in years, unfortunately, prior to my sitting on the board, there were years that they did need to accumulate for a projected project. They just hadn't passed any kind of formal resolutions, formal direction to the board to do so in that accumulation. And what that does is leaves you open for exposure for people that challenge your accumulation. And then, right, if it's for a purpose, you have the documentation and that resolves itself. So we're a little oversensitive to the 2.5 number. And if we get close to it, that we absolutely find in the meeting that when we adopt the budget, if we need to, identify exactly why. So 10 years from now, no one has
15.
to go through what we had to go through. So, so that's why I was looking for this number.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we do have, that's the reason that there's a note on that line also. This is Resolution 2017-3 funds accumulation. That in 2017, we did pass a resolution that allowed us to accumulate funds in capital improvements, specifically around what was going to happen with the assessor's office and any future capital improvements. So we have latitude in the capital improvements line item for accumulation, but beyond that, accumulation is still at a cautious area when you're budgeting and levying.
So essentially we got, what was it, in 2017, we were made aware of tax objections from the early 2000s, what, 2001 through 2005 or 6, something like that. It was.
No, it went pretty
Was it
Like
soon?
2012,
yeah. They
Like
were,
like forever.
yeah, it only
And then
like
it broke
took 2
out,
years.
right?
Yeah.
Different rates in
Sometimes it was
different
counting
years.
GA, sometimes it was only GA. So it was kind
That's
of, yeah.
Yeah, so it was, and we weren't aware of them really until Mary Jo came in and told us about them, because that's just what happened. So
Well, the system for objections, right? That was changed too a little bit. A lot happened in one time. So,
Yep.
Yeah, to anyone who might be looking to sit at this table in the future, I would just leave the cautionary tale to let us or any of your constituents know and your board know if you're going to go over the 2.5 kind of rule of thumb, that you just document it and tell us why. Clearly we had an issue with the assessor's office. Clearly we were going to need to have some money, spend money in a different way than we planned. So that's what the resolution was for.
And I think it's also good to note that for our office, the most challenging part of this is the assistance, because it is a small dollar amount. The 2.5 times, you can underspend 1 year just because nobody comes in for assistance, and now you're really facing a place where you're facing the potential objections, but at the same time that if you don't have enough money to be able to meet the assistance needs you'll have in the following year. So there is no latitude when it comes to GA, which is really unfortunate that you're trying to budget to, because it's quite variable and you have no control over how many people are who comes in a given year, or circumstances like COVID where you're going to have an increase in people coming through and needing assistance. And that's something that I would say the assembly has been asked to evaluate, that there's got to be a better way for general assistance to not be subject to the tax objections in the same way. But right now, the only revision that's been made is general assistance is subject to the 2.5 rule of thumb, just the same way as everything else.
I think COVID and a year, right? COVID the year and COVID the next year, we have nothing to do any kind of reference with, right? You have nothing to compare any projected to. If they continue the rental relief program, this might kick it down another year. So we can't over budget to accommodate for potential, right, a crisis, right, that's going to hit potentially in our community. So I like the number that you put. I think that's reasonable, and I think that should they find after I leave this chair that they did get hit hard with those requests, I knew we do have some other funds potentially that we could shift in order to meet the needs of our constituents. So I'm comfortable with the numbers you projected.
Are there other questions on my budget? Okay. Hearing none. Then I think that wraps up all three of our departments. Tomorrow we will have the tentative budgets for adoption and to be able to move forward into setting the public hearing dates, or I mean, those will just happen with the March board meeting, but we can get that process started after tomorrow. This also means I didn't hear any changes to any three of ours, and the numbers that I have for in mind for John, we're holding what he had last year also. So the documents we sent in our as a draft part of the packet should be valid for moving forward then. Right, Ed?
Okay.
Yours were matching, you were good?
I hope so.
What I'm hearing you say is you're not sending us an updated spreadsheet. We'll be using these spreadsheets tomorrow for the meeting. These are our documents.
And well, so Ed sent the set of documents that's specifically what we will adopt, and in your board packet, I also sent the ordinance language, and this as the for ordinance version of this attached. So that'll be what we actually talk about and discuss tomorrow. That these spreadsheets are just for this workshop and making sure everyone has the background they need.
Just in the past, every year I've sent you a spreadsheet, then I've sent you the formal documents, and there's been a scriber's error between the two. At this point in time, I don't think there is. But somebody will point one out tomorrow.
I think you're in the clear, Ed.
Thank you.
Oh, no, we'll have Scott look it over. He'll find something.
So I think we have done our business for the evening. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
I'll second.
And then I will ask for roll call vote from Bob.
Okay, hold on a second. And Trustee Chapman,
Aye.
Trustee Allen,
Aye.
Trustee Signorella,
Yes.
Supervisor Mullen.
Yes,
Okay,
we are adjourned. Thank you, guys.
that's it. The rest of us don't matter. And it is 8:20, I'm sorry, 7:25.